Okay, let's unpack this timeless human quest for personal freedom. It's a desire that feels as old as consciousness itself, doesn't it? This and yearning to break free from those invisible chains of self-limiting beliefs, the stories we tell ourselves that kind of hold us captive for, well, millennia. Wisdom traditions all over the world have echoed these surprisingly simple yet really profound insights, paths to a more liberated life. So today we're asking, can a code, something seemingly as accessible as the Four Agreements, which comes from ancient Toltec wisdom, can it truly transform our lives?
That's exactly the mission today. Yeah, we're diving deep, really trying to extract these core nuggets of knowledge, and we're looking at a pretty rich stack of sources, not just in Don Miguel Ruiz's work, which is central, of course, but also ancient texts, philosophy, even modern psychology. The goal really is to illuminate these, let's call them universal principles, things that when you actually practice them consistently, well, they offer a powerful path to a more authentic, more liberated existence. Think of it like a shortcut, maybe. A shortcut to being well-informed, not just about, what's happening outside, but about the actual architecture of our inner world. These are foundational truths that empower us, and we'll see how that simple, elegant framework of the Four Agreements captures so many of them so well.
And what's really striking, isn't it, is that while this whole quest for self-mastery can seem incredibly complex, maybe even overwhelming, so many of these different traditions across centuries, across cultures, they seem to land on surprisingly accessible ideas. They converge. So today, let's dive into how these universal insights can work as this powerful, actionable code for personal freedom. Principles like, the ones Ruiz lays out. Be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Let's kick things off with that first one. Be impeccable with your word, and this huge idea connected to it, the immense creative power we hold, especially in our utterances and intentions.
Indeed. That idea is massive. The concept that our words, our thoughts, even our unspoken intentions, they aren't just passive expressions floating around. No, they're active, potent forces. They actually dynamically shape our reality. It's a theme you see again and again. It's really the bedrock of conscious creation, and it's way more profound than just, wishful thinking. Gary Zukov, he puts it beautifully in The Seat of the Soul. He explains that an intention is fundamentally the reason for acting. Simple as that. It's a direct use of your will, a conscious choice we make, and that choice sets things in motion, processes that affect every aspect of your life. He's quite direct, saying we literally create your reality with your intentions. And he stresses this is about consciously shaping our light, our inner essence, with wisdom and compassion. So it's not just what you say, but the energy, the blueprint you're casting with your inner stance. That's key.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, an intention isn't just a passing thought or like setting a goal on a to-do list. It's an actual act of will, a directive we're sending out. But what's the mechanism? How do these texts explain how this works beyond just saying it creates reality? Is it like changing our perception, or is it more energetic, mystical even?
That's a great question, and many texts suggest it's really both, psychological and energetic. The seat of the soul, for instance, definitely implies an energetic alignment. Your intention radiates a certain frequency, and that influences your experiences, what comes back to you. But it's also deeply psychological. When you set a clear intention, especially one rooted in wisdom and compassion, like Zukov says, your subconscious mind actually starts to filter reality differently. It highlights opportunities, directs your actions, all in line with that intention. It's almost like turning on a specific mental GPS system, Say your intention is to find more peace in your relationships. Well, you'll start noticing, maybe unconsciously at first, moments where you can be more patient or listen better or respond with empathy. Whereas before, maybe you would have just reacted automatically.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Moving from just being a passive observer to an active co-creator of your life. And Conversations with God seems to take this idea even further, describing life itself as self-creative.
Yeah.
Like the universe is constantly creating itself through us. It's a continuous dynamic statement to the universe of who you are, which is, wow, that means every moment, every thought, every word, every intention. It's an act of self-definition. We're constantly defining ourselves.
Exactly. We're using life to create yourself as who you are and who you've always wanted to be.
So the implication is huge, right? If we want to change our experience, our outer world, we have to first change that internal statement, how we represent ourselves, first to ourselves, then to the world. It's about aligning that inner world with the reality we desire, which connects perfectly back to that first agreement from Ruiz. Be impeccable with your word, aligning internal truth with external expression.
Precisely. And this creative power, it isn't just limited to our conscious, explicitly stated intentions. It goes deeper, extending to our most fundamental beliefs, even the subconscious ones we might not even know we have. Henry David Thoreau in Walden, he gives this really striking image, doesn't he, about the internal power of belief. He notes that a tide, just the tide, can float the British Empire like a chip if he should ever harbor it in his mind. Now, obviously, that's not literal oceanography. It's a metaphor.
How powerful.
A very powerful metaphor for how our deepest thoughts, our core convictions, even the quiet, unexamined ones, they hold immense creative sway. They dictate what we even perceive as possible, and therefore what we allow ourselves to manifest. If you subconsciously believe, say, you're not worthy of success, even if you consciously intend it, that deep belief, like Thoreau's tide, will subtly undermine your efforts. It'll work against you. It really drives home how much power our words spoken and internal carry, for good or ill, which is why being impeccable with them is so critical.
It's fascinating and a bit daunting to think our internal monologue and those deep beliefs are such potent architects of what we experience. So this creative power, it demands really deep commitment to truth, to integrity, not just in what we say out loud, like, not lying to your boss or whatever, but integrity in our internal dialogue too. There's this 14th century mystical text, Theologia Germanica, makes this really interesting distinction. It talks about true light versus false light. The true light is pure. It seeketh not to deceive. But the false light, that's tied to the ego, to the I, me, mine, and the like.
Yes. The self-serving aspect.
Exactly. It seeketh itself and its own. It's driven by ego desires, maybe manipulation, not genuine, pure intention. So the text suggests that aligning with our true self, not that self-serving ego, leads to a much purer, much more potent form of creative expression. Our creations then come from authenticity, not manipulation. Our words are clean.
That's a crucial insight, and it aligns perfectly with be impeccable with your word. It's about the source of the word, the intention behind it. If we're constantly trying to shape reality from that place of ego, just seeking personal gain or validation or control, it creates this fragmented, ultimately unfulfilling life. Marianne Williamson, in A Return to Love, she hits this point hard too. She talks about the need for rigorous honesty in what she calls real work, especially in relationships. And she identifies this common fear of honestly communicating as a really profound, self-limiting pattern.
That fear's huge, isn't it?
It is, because it stops us from forming genuine connections. We're afraid to show who we really are, often because maybe we haven't fully accepted ourselves. If your word, your expression, isn't aligned with your true self, it becomes a barrier, not a bridge. It creates distortion.
So it's not just about being truthful intellectually, but an emotional honesty, maybe even a spiritual honesty. And it's not just what we say, but also what we choose not to say or how we choose to say it. Aldous Huxley in the Perennial Philosophy touches on this. He talks about the wisdom of restraint of speech and advocating for concord, harmony, agreement, without putting others down, without disparaging them. The idea seems to be that responsible communication, when it's guided by truth and compassion, actively builds harmony. It builds understanding. It doesn't sow discord. It's like recognizing the energy, the impact of every single word, even a casual comment, and choosing carefully. That feels like the heart of impeccability. It implies a kind of conscious filter, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Restraint isn't silence for silence's sake. It's thoughtful, intentional speech. Speech that serves a higher purpose, like connection or truth. It's a proactive choice to foster peace, not just avoid conflict. So if we combine these ideas, being impeccable with your word means, speaking truth, acting with integrity, but also aligning your deepest intentions with your true self, not your ego, and being mindful, really mindful of the impact of your words, both the ones inside your head and the ones you speak out loud, understanding them as creative acts that shape your reality moment by moment.
That leads us beautifully into the next universal principle, which is maybe one of the hardest. Cultivating detachment from personal offense and judgment. This is where it gets really interesting, I think, because so much human suffering seems to come from taking things personally, reacting to external events, other people's actions, things they say that we perceive as slights. And so many wisdom traditions, including the second Toltec agreement, don't take anything personally. They offer this profound path to inner peace just by shifting how we look at these interactions. Sounds simple on paper, but man, it's incredibly challenging in practice, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is, because it requires disidentifying from these really deeply ingrained patterns of reaction. Eckhart Tolle, in The Power of Now, he explains it really clearly. He says that basically all emotional pain is just a modification of one primordial, undifferentiated emotion.
Right.
And where does that root emotion come from? From the loss of awareness of who you are beyond name and form. Forgetting our deeper nature. Our mind, with its constant chatter, its main job often becomes trying to fight or remove that emotional pain.
Yeah, the mind tries to fix it.
Right. But Tolle says that effort is ultimately futile. Why? Because the mind itself is an intrinsic part of the problem. It's the source of the judgment creating the pain. The real solution, he says, lies in learning to disidentify from indigo, to step back and become the watcher. It's this profound realization, quote, that which is aware of sadness is not sad. That which is aware of fear is not fearful. He argues the pain we feel is largely because of a judgment you have made about a thing. Take away the judgment, the label, the story, and the pain often dissolves. This disidentification, it creates a space of freedom.
That concept of becoming the watcher, it's so central in mindfulness and many traditions. But how practical is it? Especially when emotions feel totally overwhelming, when
Yeah.
someone's criticism hits you right in the gut and feels intensely personal. Are there like specific watcher techniques or maybe first steps these traditions suggest beyond just sort of acknowledging the feeling?
It's definitely challenging, especially at first. Tully himself suggests starting simple. Just observe. Feel the emotion in your body. Where is it? What does it feel like physically? Acknowledge it's there. And this is the key part, don't label it immediately. Don't judge it as bad. And definitely don't let your mind instantly spin a whole story around it. Just notice it. The goal is to realize the emotion is happening to you, but it is not you. So when someone criticizes you, instead of that immediate gut reaction, ouch, they think I'm worthless. How what? You might observe, okay, there's heat in my chest, tightness in my throat, and you consciously say to yourself, okay, I am feeling anger and hurt right now, but I am not anger and hurt. Theo. That small shift, that conscious insertion of awareness, creates this vital gap between the stimulus and your reaction. It gives you a choice point.
Okay, so it's not the event itself, but our internal reaction, our judgment about the event, that really causes the suffering. Sam Harris, in Waking Up, echoes this, doesn't he? He reminds us that consciousness is never truly confined by what it knows.
Which implies we can observe our feelings, our thoughts, our sensations without being defined by them, without being imprisoned by them. We can be aware of the anger or the fear without being angry or fearful. Like you said, watching clouds pass, you see them, but you're not the clouds.
Exactly. You are the sky, not the weather patterns moving through it. And this connects directly to the law of detachment from Deepak Chopra's, the 7 spiritual laws of success. This law says to acquire anything in the physical universe, you have to relinquish your attachment to the result. Now, this doesn't mean giving up your intention or your desire. It means letting go of your rigid attachment to a specific outcome, which is a perfect parallel to don't take anything personally.
How so? What's
Yeah.
the connection there? Because, Chopra explains, attachment is based on fear and insecurity, and that need for security. It comes from not knowing the true self. When we chase external symbols of success, the car, the house, the job title, the money, mistaking them for real fulfillment, we inevitably invite anxiety and this deep sense of hollowness into our lives because we're confusing the symbol for the real thing. True fulfillment comes from knowing our inner self, from that inner peace, not from external stuff. Detachment, paradoxically, allows better things to happen. Opportunities emerge from the chaos because we're not desperately trying to force one specific solution. We're open.
But there's a potential pitfall there, isn't there? Could relinquishing attachment to the result be easily misinterpreted as just apathy, like not caring, not having drive? How do these texts differentiate genuine, powerful detachment from just, giving up, especially in our very goal-oriented society?
That's a critical distinction, and it comes up a lot. Detachment, in these wisdom traditions, is not about indifference or inaction, not at all. It's about freedom from the outcome, which, counterintuitively, actually enhances your ability to act effectively. When you're not desperately attached, you can adapt more easily. You can learn from setbacks without being crushed. You can see and seize unexpected opportunities that arise. Think about an artist, maybe. They pour their heart into a painting. That's the intention, the effort. But if they're intensely attached to getting specific critical acclaim or selling it for a certain price, they might become paralyzed by fear or bitter if it doesn't happen exactly that way.
Right, the joy gets sucked out of it.
Exactly. But if they're detached from the outcome, they still create with passion. They still do their best. But if the painting doesn't sell or gets a bad review, they can learn from it, grow, and move on to the next creation without their fundamental sense of self-worth being shattered. It's about being fully engaged in the process, but not letting the external result dictate your internal state.
That's a really helpful way to put it. Letting go of the outcome actually frees up energy for the process. And it transforms how we deal with the world. St. Teresa of Avila in Interior Castle, she actually encourages us to be ashamed of worrying over anything that is done or said against us. Which sounds kind of harsh to modern ears, maybe. We're often encouraged to validate our feelings. But her point seems to be about perspective. contrasting that self-concern, that worry about slights, with a much larger perspective of, like, mercy and grace.
Yes, it's a call to elevate our viewpoint.
To get beyond the petty grievances, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that our reactions often say way more about our own inner state, our own insecurities, than about whatever happened externally.
And that elevated perspective, it should ideally extend to embracing the whole spectrum of human experience, including pain, not just trying to avoid it. Pema Chodron, in When Things Fall Apart, she really emphasizes dissolving the dualistic tension between us and them, this and that, good and bad. She calls for cultivating a fearlessly compassionate attitude toward our own pain and that of others. This means moving beyond those reactive patterns of judgment, this is good, that's bad, they hurt me, and embracing a more expansive, empathetic view, which is absolutely essential for real inner peace. When you truly don't take things personally, you can see someone else's hurtful words not just as an attack on you, but maybe as a reflection of their own pain, their own conditioning, their own messed up agreements, And that allows for compassion instead of just defensiveness.
That's a huge shift, but acknowledging the reality of our internal experience is still vital, isn't it? Especially when we're talking about deeper wounds, like trauma. Bessel van der Kolk, in The Body Keeps the Score, he gives us a reality check. He reminds us how incredibly difficult it is to change those deeply ingrained emotional responses, especially the ones rooted in trauma. He says the rational brain is basically impotent to talk the emotional brain out of its own reality. You can't just think your way out of it. Trauma, he explains, can trap people in this story of victimization and revenge, making it almost impossible to move beyond reactivity. So that highlights the really deep work that might be required for some people to reclaim that self-regulation, to stop letting fear and external narratives run the show. It makes supplying "don't take anything personally" a much bigger challenge in those cases. It's not a quick fix.
Absolutely not. And for anyone with a history of significant trauma, hearing "just don't take it personally" can feel incredibly invalidating, even harmful. The wisdom traditions here, they don't advocate ignoring or suppressing that pain, not at all. It's more about transforming our relationship with the pain. That means, first, acknowledging the body's reality, the nervous system's response, maybe engaging with it through practices like mindfulness or somatic experiencing, things van der Kolk discusses, and then gradually creating that space, that watcher perspective, allowing for conscious choice instead of automatic trauma-based reaction. It's a process of self-healing, often slow and requiring support. But that healing work eventually makes the practice of not taking things personally much more accessible, much more possible.
So it's a journey towards internal ownership, reclaiming that inner space. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, he offers such a concise and powerful take in the Meditations. He says, "If any man sinned or offended, the hurt is to himself."
Classic Stoicism.
Right. It really reinforces that idea.
Yeah.
Taking things personally primarily harms yourself. You're allowing external actions to disturb your inner peace, your tranquility. He asserts that being agreeable to yourself, harmonious with your fellows, that inner and outer peace, it comes from honoring your own intellectual part, your inner wisdom, your reasoned judgment, not letting your peace be dictated by whatever chaos is happening outside. It's a profound affirmation of internal sovereignty, really.
It really is. It's about fundamentally recognizing that someone else's behavior, their words, their actions, it's almost always a reflection of their inner state, their worldview, their fears, their agreements. It's very rarely, if ever, a direct, accurate statement about your inherent worth or value. When you truly internalize that deeply, it empowers you. It gives you the space to choose your response rather than just reacting on autopilot. You learn to protect your inner sanctuary, as Nguyen might say, to maintain your own peace regardless of the storm outside. And that is the profound freedom that comes from truly, don't take anything personally.
Okay, moving on to our third key principle, which ties in so well. Embracing clarity by questioning assumptions. Our minds, as we've touched on, are incredibly good at creating narratives, at filling in the blanks, often without us even noticing. And this habit, well, it can lead to huge misunderstandings of other people, of situations, even of ourselves. And it can impose these self-limiting beliefs that we aren't even aware we're carrying around. This connects directly to the third Toltec agreement. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, from a more scientific perspective, our brains are literally designed to do this. Michael Pollan, in How to Change Your Mind, he describes the brain as a prediction-making machine. That's its job. It's constantly leaping to conclusions, constantly relying on prior experience to inform current perception.
Why does it do that?
Well, it's basically an adaptive mechanism, a kind of efficiency filter. It allows us to navigate the world quickly without having to consciously process every single bit of sensory data hitting us. Imagine how overwhelming that would be. But the downside is huge. It means that a lot of what we perceive as reality is actually internally constructed. It's filtered through our past experiences, our biases, our expectations, and this filtering process can easily obscure the actual torrent of information that's available to us in any given moment. So we end up believing we know things we don't actually know, simply because our brain took a shortcut, made an assumption based on past patterns. Like if you had a bad experience with, say, someone in a particular profession years ago, your brain might automatically assume negative intent from anyone in that profession now, even if there's zero evidence for it in the current interaction. That's an assumption machine at work.
That's incredible. Our brains are built for assumptions as a shortcut, but that shortcut can seriously mess with our perception of reality and how we connect with people. Brené Brown, she talks about this in Gifts of Imperfection. She connects it to our deep, inherent need for certainty. We crave knowing, we hate ambiguity. And she says this need for certainty often silences our intuitive voice. It makes us not good at not knowing.
Yeah, we want answers now.
Exactly. And that drive, that impatience for certainty, it pushes us to leap to conclusions. And critically, as she points out, it makes us ignore contradictory evidence. Once we've made the assumption, created the narrative, we tend to cling to it, even when new information comes along that suggests we might be wrong. It feels like the opposite of curiosity, doesn't it?
It is exactly the opposite of curiosity. Curiosity requires being comfortable with not knowing for a moment. And this gets even trickier when we're just, lost in thought, which is most of the time for many of us. Sam Harris, again in Waking Up, he illustrates how the state of being lost in thought leads directly to confusion and misperception. He notes that if we don't actually see a thought arising, if we don't notice it as just a thought, the next thought will seem to become what you are.
So we identify with it
Instantly. We identify so completely with these fleeting mental constructs, judgments, worries, assumptions, that they become our perceived reality. They obscure the underlying awareness, the watcher. So this continuous stream of unexamined thoughts, many of which are assumptions, becomes our self and our world. Think about sending a text message and not getting an immediate reply. Your brain, craving certainty, might instantly jump to, oh, they must be angry with me, or I said something wrong. It ignores countless other possibilities. They're busy, their phone's dead, they haven't seen it yet. But that assumption, fueled by the need for certainty, quickly solidifies into your reality for that moment, causing totally unnecessary anxiety, all based on an unverified guess.
It really is amazing how many of these ancient texts seem to anticipate what modern psychology is now confirming about our cognitive biases and how our minds work. It's uncanny sometimes. So what's the common thread? What do these diverse sources suggest is the way out? How do we actually transcend these built-in prediction machines and truly live by don't make assumptions?
Well, the common thread seems to be a radical embrace of, let's call it intellectual humility, an active inquiry, asking questions instead of assuming answers. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his essays, he frames it as this stark choice we constantly face. The choice between truth and repose, between seeking truth, which is often uncomfortable, and seeking comfort or rest and easy answers.
Truth or comfort, yeah.
And he argues passionately that he in whom the love of truth predominates will keep himself aloof from all moorings and afloat. That means embracing uncertainty, avoiding dogmatism, being willing, as he puts it, to submit to the inconvenience of suspense and imperfect opinion. It's a call to be a perpetual candidate for truth, always open, always questioning, rather than seeking the false comfort of thinking you have it all figured out. This deliberate practice of suspending judgment, of asking, is that really true? Or what else could be going on here? That's crucial to breaking the assumption habit.
To be a candidate for truth rather than a possessor of it.
Yep.
That's a fundamentally different way of approaching knowledge and interaction.
Wow. But that requires a pretty refined internal skill set, doesn't it? It's not easy.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And the yogic tradition speaks directly to this. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali talk about developing discriminating ability. Viveka in Sanskrit. This is the sharpened ability to sort between his spirit, his true self, and his psychological viewing aids, the mind, the senses, the ego. This discrimination, this clarity, allows us to recognize and abandon those subtle motivations, like the need to be right, or fear, or ingrained biases that are counterproductive to clear perception. It's a continuous practice, like constantly cleaning your glasses. You're always checking your internal lens for smudges, for distortions caused by assumptions. And sometimes, maybe to get really clear, we have to go even further and let go of what we think we know altogether. There's that other anonymous mystical text, The Cloud of Unknowing. It talks about a practice of actively working against all thoughts, even destroying of a man's own curiosity, of cunning, and of natural wit, which sounds extreme.
It does sound extreme out of context.
But the purpose isn't to become stupid or ignorant, right? It's about penetrating that cumbrous cloud of unknowing, that fog of concepts and assumptions that separates us from a deeper, more direct understanding. It's like shedding all the intellectual baggage, all the preconceived notions that prevent us from having a direct, unmediated perception of reality. A kind of radical emptying, maybe, to truly see clearly beyond our own mental constructs.
Exactly. It's a recognition that our intellectual frameworks, our concepts, our assumptions, while useful tools for navigating the everyday world, they can also become barriers. Barriers to a deeper, more direct grasp of truth or reality or being. When you actively work against that immediate reflex to label, categorize, explain, assume, you open up a space for fresh insight, for seeing things as they actually are, not just as your mind predicts they should be. It's a powerful, if challenging tool for truly living grails. Don't make assumptions. Moving beyond the mind's quick, efficient, but often deeply inaccurate predictions about everything.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of our word, not taking things personally, questioning assumptions. So what does this all mean in practice? How do we bring it all together?
Right.
It seems to point directly to our fourth universal principle, the final Toltec agreement. Always do your best. Which, importantly, isn't about this relentless, exhausting chase for perfection, right?
Yeah.
It seems more like a consistent commitment to growth, to adapting, to just showing up fully in each moment, whatever that looks like.
That's exactly right. The emphasis is on the doing, the effort, not necessarily hitting some impossible, static ideal of perfect. It's an ongoing internal process. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai warrior, he captures this so powerfully in his Dokudu, his path of aloneness, found in The Complete Musashi. He gives this advice: seek victory today over the self of yesterday. Tomorrow, conquer your shortcomings and then build your strong points.
Wow. So direct.
It's incredibly direct. It's about continuous, incremental self-mastery, day-by-day improvement, and he emphasizes the dedication needed. Practice all I have written here, mindful of not veering from the path. He saw the path to mastery as this 1,000-mile road, taken one step at a time. It really underscores that progress comes through consistent daily application, just showing up day after day and applying yourself, doing your best for that day.
That's such a great frame life, is this journey of constant refinement, not a fixed destination called perfection. And yet, gosh, so often we stop ourselves before we even begin because of that fear, right? The fear of not doing it perfectly. Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way, she really tackles this head on, this common block. She explains how we often won't do something unless we can guarantee that we'll do it perfectly.
The paralysis of perfectionism.
Totally.
Mhm.
And this demand for guaranteed perfection keeps us stuck. It stops us from taking risks, from trying new things, from learning. Her solution: we need to jettison our accepted limits. We need to actively break through "I can't because," whatever excuse follows. It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, permission to be beginners, to learn, to grow, to embrace the iterative nature of what doing your best actually means. It changes day to day.
Absolutely. It's recognizing that doing your best is about genuine effort in this moment, given your current energy, resources, knowledge, and importantly, letting go of the outcome, like we talked about with attachment. Marie Kondo, surprisingly perhaps, offers a wonderful analogy in the life-changing magic of tidying up.
Tidying up, how does that connect?
Well, she describes how overcoming a specific negative self-image, like the common belief, oh, I'm just no good at tidying, I'm naturally messy, can actually trigger a drastic change in self-perception overall. Successfully tackling that one area through consistent effort can ignite this powerful belief that you can do anything if you set your mind to it. It's not really just about the tidying itself, it's a demonstration. It shows how small, consistent efforts, applied with intention to overcome a limiting belief, can dramatically shift our sense of capability and agency across all areas of life. If you can conquer "I'm bad at tidying," which felt like a fixed truth, what other fixed truths about yourself might also be changeable with consistent effort?
That's powerful. Seeing how mastering one small area, doing your best there, can ripple outwards and change your whole self-concept. And this idea of consistent effort, it also has this deep spiritual dimension in many traditions. The Philokalia, which is this collection of texts from the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition, it talks about how we should labor as one in debt to God for blessings already received.
Ah, that shifts the motivation entirely.
Completely.
Yeah.
Instead of working as if God or the universe is somehow in your debt for your efforts, hoping to earn favor, you work from a place of gratitude. It encourages this humble, persistent, grateful effort. And crucially, it includes the understanding that even when you fail, do not lose heart. keep going.
Because the effort itself is the point, not just the result.
Right. It shifts the whole motivation from being transactional, I do this, so I get that, to being almost reverential, an expression of gratitude, which feels much more sustainable and maybe more joyful too.
And this kind of persistent, intentional effort, when it's motivated by gratitude or love rather than fear or obligation, it ultimately leads to really profound outcomes. Deep inner peace, a sense of alignment. Theologia Germanica, again, it describes the possibility of achieving a fresh and real union with the divine or with being multiple times a day, and the experience of finding the kingdom of heaven and eternal life right here on earth when you are fully aligned with that higher purpose, when you're living these principles. So it's not some distant afterlife goal. It's a lived experience of inner harmony that becomes available in the present moment through that consistent practice of doing your best, whatever your best looks like today.
That sense of profound inner peace, contentment, it resonates across so many sources. Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, at the end of that book, beautifully portrays this state. It describes Siddhartha reaching the perfection of his calm, experiencing this light and peace that comes from long, dedicated inner work. And how is that state characterized? By no searching, no desire, no imitation, no effort to be seen.
The release from striving.
Exactly. It's this deep contentment that arises from within, completely untethered from external striving or needing approval from others. It feels like the ultimate reward, maybe, of a life lived by these kinds of principles, of truly doing your best, but without that desperate attachment to external validation.
And there's also an intrinsic reward in the effort itself, in the creative act. Rollo May, in The Courage to Create, he talks about this sharp sense of joy, or perhaps better expressed, a sense of mild ecstasy. When does it come? When you find the particular form required by your creation. And this isn't just about painting or writing music. It applies to any act of bringing something new into being, solving a problem, reaching a new understanding, shifting your own self-perception. That feeling of joy, of rightness, it's like this natural feedback loop. It affirms the value and the power of our intentional efforts, of that consistent commitment to always doing our best.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, what we really have here is this incredibly powerful, yet surprisingly simple, actionable framework for living. Drawn from this amazing array of sources, ancient wisdom, philosophy, psychology, spiritual texts, yet it's all beautifully distilled in the Toltec wisdom of the Four Agreements. You've got the immense creative power of your word and intention. Be impeccable with your word. The profound freedom that comes from not taking things personally. Don't take anything personally. The clarity you gain by constantly, gently questioning your assumptions. Don't make assumptions. And the strength and peace that comes from continuous, dedicated effort to simply always do your best. These aren't just abstract ideas, are they? They feel like universal operating principles for navigating both our inner and outer worlds more effectively, more peacefully.
And embracing these principles, living them, is where that profound shift in consciousness and self-perception really starts to happen, starts to blossom. Ken Wilber, in The Integral Vision, he talks about this developmental arc that humans can follow, from pre-personal to personal to transpersonal.
Can you unpack that a bit? Pre-personal, personal, transpersonal.
Sure. So pre-personal is like our early subconscious instinct-driven stage before a stable ego fully forms. Think infancy. Personal is where most of us operate the realm of the individual ego, our sense of separate identity, our personality. But through practices like these agreements, Wilbur suggests, the self can actually expand beyond the personal realm. It can move into the transpersonal. These are states of luminous clarity, of unitive experiences, where your sense of self isn't just confined to your individual skin bag, you know. You feel connected to something larger, experience moments of deep peace, insight, maybe even ecstasy that go beyond the everyday struggles of the ego. It's a journey of self-transcendence.
That sounds like a kind of homecoming, doesn't it? Expanding beyond the limitations we normally perceive, back to our true, wider nature. The power of now definitely confirms that feeling. Tully reiterates how being reveals itself as your true nature when you disidentify from the mind and the ego. He talks about reaching a state where one has effectively transcended the body. Not literally, but in terms of identification. It's realizing your essence isn't your thoughts, your emotions, or even your physical form, but that pure, spacious awareness that observes it all. A return to what the Toltecs might call our true, perfect, inherently free self.
It is a homecoming, exactly. Henri Nouwen captures that feeling so movingly in The Return of the Prodigal Son, reflecting on Rembrandt's painting. He describes finding an inner sanctuary, finding an inner place where I, too, could be held as safely as the son in the father's embrace. This isn't about escaping the world, it's about discovering that secure, authentic self within, a source of unwavering peace, regardless of what's happening outside. And that inner sanctuary, it's built brick by brick through the consistent application of these agreements, these principles.
And this inner transformation, this homecoming, it seems to unleash a kind of power, too. Stephen Prothero in God is Not One, he mentions the Yoruba concept of ash. Fascinating idea.
Ash, yes. What is it exactly?
He describes it as the awesome power to make things happen, the power to make things change. It's like a fundamental life force or spiritual energy.
And the implication seems to be that this inherent potential, Ash, it gets unlocked or we align with it through living these principles. Through the clarity of our intention, impeccable word, the freedom from reactivity, not taking things personally, the wisdom of clear perception, not assuming, and the committed action, doing our best. It suggests that true personal freedom isn't just about feeling good internally, but about becoming a more potent, positive agent of change in our own lives and maybe even in the world around us. And ultimately, all these diverse paths, all these agreements, they converge on the vital importance of self-knowledge. The ancient Indian texts, the Upanishads, they state it so profoundly. All this is known when the self has been seen, heard, thought of, and meditated upon. Self-knowledge is presented as the key that unlocks understanding not just of ourselves, but of the interconnectedness of everything, revealing our true place in the cosmos. It's through this rigorous, honest self-exploration, guided by these universal principles, that genuine wisdom emerges.
And the beautiful, practical outcome of all this deep work. It seems to be a state of natural joy, simplicity, and ease. Benjamin Hoff, in the Tao of Pu, he puts it so simply, a harmonious way of living is happiness. And how do we find that harmony? By clearing out the messy mind, the cluttered mind full of assumptions and judgments and fears, to discover the fullness of nothing. It sounds paradoxical, but maybe means that state of calm clarity, pure presence, pure potential.
Like the silence between the notes that makes the music possible.
Exactly. That quiet, spacious awareness that remains when all the mental chatter and the ego's demands finally subside.
And this harmonious way of living, this path to self-mastery, it really does transcend any single doctrine, any single tradition. Aldous Huxley, back in the Perennial Philosophy, he reaffirms this beautifully. He says that a wise man accepts the essence of different scriptures and sees only the good in all religions. It highlights the universal resonance of these core paths to self-mastery, recognizing that truth, like light, can shine through many different windows. And the four agreements offer one brilliantly clear, incredibly practical window through which to see and live that truth.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. Really exploring how these interconnected principles, the creative power of our word, the freedom and detachment, the clarity from questioning assumptions, and the strength in doing our best, how they form this potent, actionable framework. The wisdom of the Toltec, echoed across so many diverse traditions, truly does offer a practical code for personal freedom.
And that brings us perhaps to a final thought, a question for you, the listener, to maybe take away from this deep dive. How consistently are you actually applying these principles? Not just thinking about them as interesting ideas, but using them as active shapers of your experience, moment by moment. How might your perception of reality, your entire experience of life, fundamentally shift if you truly lived as though your internal world and your external world are always, in every breath, every interaction, every choice, a direct reflection of your deepest agreements with yourself? The power to transform, it really is always right there within you, just waiting to be wielded with awareness, with wisdom, and with compassion.